Hi, and welcome to TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers, a program of educators worldwide. I'm your host today, Melanie Gobert.
Hello, everyone. This is Melanie Gobert, your host for today's episode of TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers. Today, joining us is Savannah Davis. She's an EFL teacher for adult learners in Malta. And she's going to be talking about contextualizing language with visual paralinguistics. Okay, what do you mean by visual paralinguistics?
Well, paralinguistics in the traditional sense focuses more on things related to the voice. So tone, speed, pitch, but it can attribute to all aspects of language that are nonverbal. So visual paralinguistics focuses more on the visual cues, the body language, the facial expressions, the language that we don't really talk about so much in language classrooms.
Okay, so can you elaborate on the specific language learning benefits of using silent videos in the EFL classroom?
Definitely. So obviously, first of all, engagement is a big thing. When you show students a video, they're very curious. They want to know what's going to happen next. It's not a boring vocabulary lesson anymore or a boring grammar lesson anymore. You're contextualizing what you're trying to illustrate. So in language teacher courses, they talk about using realia. Now, realia is very good, but it's a bit limited in terms of what you can do because you can only use tangible objects. Today, we have the power of technology, which is rapidly advancing. So we can illustrate more complex ideas, more complex emotions related to vocabulary, grammar concepts that you couldn't do with traditional realia. Also, accessibility. Videos are readily available online. There are billions and billions of videos on the internet about almost every single topic. Also, what I think is better about silent videos rather than traditional media is because there's no dialogue, the teacher can focus on whatever target language that they want and adapt it according to the level. So, for example, there's a vocabulary lesson that I teach where there's some birds and they're gossiping and they're having a bit of an argument with some of the other birds. With a lower level class, I might teach them the words argument or fight. But with an intermediate or a higher level class, I might teach them words like bickering, for example. So it's very versatile in what you can actually teach them. Also, retention. When you're stimulating more than one channel, Pavio posits the dual code theory. That means that you can actually send things into the long-term memory, encode them there rather than just the short-term memory.
Okay, so particularly for grammar and vocabulary, how do you use silent videos for that?
So for a vocabulary lesson, for example, I might start by pre-teaching the vocabulary, explaining the form, the meaning, and the use. And then I would show them a silent video where this vocabulary is present and give them a comprehension task where they would need to identify these features of language within the video. For a grammar class, I would do something similar. I have a modals of deduction lesson where I explain what modals of deduction are. And then I show them the first part of the video. And then I stop it at the most interesting moment, so I know I've got their attention. And I ask them to deduce what has happened and what is going to happen using the target language.
Okay. Let's move on to how teachers can select appropriate silent videos. I know there's tons of stuff out there.
Definitely. There are, I might not say billions, but at least millions of videos out there. The first thing that I would say is that silent doesn't mean no sound. Some teachers like to show videos without any sound at all and ask the students to infer what's going on. I find that when there's no audio stimulation whatsoever, students get more distracted. You would think it would work the other way around, that they would get less distracted because they're focusing on what's going on in front of them. But it actually doesn't work that way. They end up watching what's going on outside or what's going on with the door. So that's the first thing. I think it should also be something, you need to be careful that it's appropriate for the audience. In order to engage people, you need to show them things that they're going to enjoy. So knowing the people that you have in front of you and what their interests are, I feel is very important. And of course, they need to be age appropriate. Also the video length. If you use videos that are longer than a couple of minutes, the danger is that they would get distracted as well. We have very short attention spans as people, and the attention span varies according to things that happen even before they enter the classroom, things that teachers have no control over. So longer videos risk distraction and loss of engagement. If a teacher wants to work with a slightly longer video, I would suggest breaking it up in a similar way to the models of deductions lesson that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Those are the main tips that I think I would mention for choosing the right videos.
Okay, so you've mentioned 2 or 3 minute long videos in general.
Yep.
Are there any resources that you would recommend for finding those videos?
Well, YouTube has a lot of videos on them, but personally, I really enjoy using Pixar Shorts videos because I find that they're very versatile. I access this myself through a Disney Plus subscription, so it's not free, but there are a lot of free resources on YouTube that can be used as well. Sometimes there are CGI video competitions, for example, with the silent videos, and I find these really good to use in the classroom.
Okay, and what follow-up activities do you recommend to solidify grammar and vocabulary learning?
So I think it's very important to have controlled output and free output activities at the end to work on the students' productive skills, because it's good for them to recognize the language and context, but if they can't use it, then that's only half the job done. So I like to create exercises where students need to use the vocabulary, for example, through context of different sentences, or use the words to create their own sentences, or personalized questions where they need to use the specific target language. Going back to the modals of deduction lessons that I mentioned earlier, I show them a couple of pictures with different social contexts, and I ask them to infer what's going on within these pictures. So controlled practice and free practice activities are very important to consolidate their knowledge.
Okay, and can you share some examples of more lessons that you've used with different proficiency levels?
So I use different videos according to the target language that I want to teach. I've got quite a few different silent videos. Most of them are based on vocabulary rather than grammar, because grammar is a little bit harder. If you have something very specific in mind, it's like I mentioned, there are so many videos out there. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. So that could be a little bit more difficult. If you're looking through silent videos with an open mind, the opportunities are endless. But when it comes to grammar, we are a little bit more limited in terms of what we can do if we're looking for something specific. However, I think that will change in the very near future, because generative AI, OpenAI specifically, is working on a video generation tool now. And I think for teachers, this can be a very effective thing to use. We can explain exactly what we want to illustrate and then have the generative AI create the video for us. So in the future, I think this will get a little bit easier. But to give you specific examples, it's a bit difficult because I've got lots of different videos related to different vocabulary and different grammar for different levels. However, what I could maybe recommend for grammar, for example, is a comparatives and superlatives lesson. I might show my students 2 different places, videos being illustrating different places, and ask students to make comparisons with these different places, or illustrate personalities of different people and ask them to make comparatives. Another lesson that I have is a silent video where something very unfortunate happens, and I do this with a B2 level class. And I teach them the mixed conditionals during this time. So we discuss what happened, what the misfortunes were, And if they'd made a different choice, how life could be different now. So these are some examples.
I think it's very exciting what you say about generative AI, because I remember in my younger teaching days, post Grapevine, if you remember that series. If you don't, you'll have to ask someone older than you are. But besides that, very difficult to find videos, and you could spend a lot of time looking.
Yeah.
So generative AI making a video like it can produce lessons for teachers, English teachers, is very exciting.
Yes, I'm very excited about that. I've been doing some research. They haven't said exactly when it's coming out, but they are collaborating with artists at the moment. So should be out in a few months. And I'm really excited to explore the possibilities of using this in the classroom with my students.
And just one more little question. I mean, you know, social media really engages people today of almost all ages. They spend a lot of time on social media, and it has become more and more video oriented. Do you ever use anything you see or anything that's trending or popular like that to engage your students' interest?
Oh, definitely. Sometimes my students will have a question about a language feature or how they can use a particular expression. And then inevitably later I'll go on TikTok, and lo and behold, it gives me a video with that example. So I use every opportunity that I can to show my students and incorporate social media into the classroom, because it is a reality of today. I think some people try to fight it, but I think we should embrace all the tools and the resources that we have available to us to create better and new learning opportunities that will engage our students.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us today, Savannah. We really enjoyed your comments about using paralinguistic material.
Yeah, paralinguistic cues, yeah.
Okay, this has been your host, Melanie Gobert, on behalf of TTELT, Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers, a podcast brought to you by educators worldwide. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Share with us how you are using these tips. Leave us a comment or voice message on social media or at ttelt.org. Thanks for joining this episode of TTELT, brought to you by educators worldwide. Follow, like, and subscribe to TTELT on your social media, and try a new teaching tip today.